Hello everybody, my name is Stratnos, and in today's video we have 10.1 PTR development notes. There are dungeon changes, which will be in the later half of this video, and there are general class changes, which I'm going to lead with for this one, but there should be chapters below if I've done my job and found the timestamp appropriately. So, here are the updates to this week's Embers of Neltharion PTR. We've decided to increase both player stamina and enemy damage by 25% in Embers of Neltharion. This is very much like an adjustment that was made just before the launch of Dragonflight. That was, I think, a 40% of the same numbers. And it's for the same reasons. When damage mitigation abilities and healing are too strong relative to player health, the only way to threaten players is to make enemy damage very high and spiky. If healers can quickly top off their teammates and mana isn't a limiting factor, enemies have to be tuned to have the capacity to do burst damage that kills players before healers can react. And that is kind of the direction we were already moving, even though they'd already made this change because of just how powerful the tank and healer and DPS survivability kits even all were, created largely with the talent system. So this isn't very satisfying gameplay. Increasing player health gives players more times to react to incoming damage, and it makes players' choices about cooldowns and mana management more meaningful. Mana also something they've been working on balancing between the different healers as well, so something that a little bit less worrying than it would have been had they not done that. Along with this change, you'll see several adjustments to hybrid healing spells, items, and enchantments, as well as percentage-based healing spells, because that's an important thing about this, right? When you make a change like this by default, it's going to be stuff like Death Strike that benefits the most, right? Because Death Strike is a percent healing thing, and so those are the sorts of things where they need to look through and see if those need specific adjustments. Anyways, so player stamina increased by 25%. Enemy spell and melee damage increased by 25%. Self-healing and absorb shield spells for damage dealers and tanks have been increased by a commensurate amount so that they retain their impact when solo or when supporting a group. So presumably this means flat healing effects are also getting increased, although they say a commensurate amount. Now, I of course know what this word is. I'm sure you guys do as well, but just in case, it means corresponding in size and degree or proportion. So does that mean 25%, or does that just mean by some amount, proportion? Maybe if it's like, if it was a 10% self-heal, it's getting 25% more. I guess that would still be a 25% increase. So I don't know. Yeah, I assume this means roughly 25%. We'll see on the PTR itself. So, okay, it looks like, I guess we're seeing that, yeah, healing of these flat effects is being increased by 25% generally, and Leech from Voracious increased to 12 from 10, which again, that's 20% more, right? Frost 2-set and 4-set are being nerfed. Frost was doing quite a lot of damage, actually on live already. On PTR it was doing okay, although it didn't seem to be particularly... It seemed like it would be tough to play an immobile melee DPS like DPS DK on a lot of the fights. But they are getting nerfed here. I don't know enough about the theory to see if this is justified or not. They've also nerfed the 4-set of Unholy DK. Havoc DH is now actually getting a fodder to the flame. So because this is percent healing, you see they're actually nerfing the percent of healing that it does. So it's not even going to stay the same percent of your health, right? It's going to be less of a percent of your health, the same flat health, but you have much more health now, right? As they've done this stamina bump. But know that they didn't do this for Death Strike, right? For Blood Decay. So I expect that is great news for DK players, that, their max HP based scaling, or I guess their incoming damage taken based scaling is not getting nerfed at all here. Vengeance, Feldev healing increased by 25%. Yeah, again, so these are all just 25% increases in all of the Vengeance healing. And note that they are not doing this fodder to the flame nerf for Vengeance, it looks like, either. All right, Balance, actually they're buffing by a little bit more, the Regrowth and Swift Mend. So they want those to be a little bit better relatively, and same with Feral, except in PvP combat, and the other stuff by 25%. They are also buffing some Feral DPS by a little bit. They're changing the 2-set as well. Okay. And then they're nerfing Thrashing Claws. Then they're buffing Dreadful Bleeding and nerfing Tear Open Wounds, which is one of the AoE uh, talents. Okay, so I assume this is mostly a wash for Feral, but I'm not 100% sure. The Feral scientists will have to take a look. It just seems kind of like they're moving around where the damage is. I don't expect that'll be huge percents either way because they're all such small changes. Guardian. Guardian is getting also the off healing increase here, and then the healing of their other stuff is being increased as well to kind of compensate for the larger health pool and the larger incoming damage. And I guess Frenzied Regen is also kind of a winner in the way that this all works out. Devastation, Feed the Flames has been buffed. Snapfire's been massively buffed. Shattering Star's been nerfed. Scintillation's Eternity Surge Power. Oh, that's the free Eternity Surges when you're channeling Disintegrate. Okay, they've nerfed that a little bit. Fair enough. And then they're buffing all the healing by, again, 25% on these healing things. So that's all the change we already know about. Hunter, they're actually nerfing Rejuvenating Wind percent health. So again, it looks like their kind of general tack is what we've seen so far. Tank's percent health based healing is staying the same. Tank's flat healing and DPS's flat healing are getting buffed by 25%. And then DPS players' percent health healing is getting nerfed such that it's the same flat amount, but a smaller percentage of their health bar. We saw this with the Havoc Fodder to the Flame change, and now we're seeing it here for Hunter with Rejuvenating Wind as well, which means that relative to your health bar, you're going to be sustaining a little bit less well than you were before on a DPS, but you're still getting the same flat amount of healing, but mobs are doing more damage. So it is a nerf to basically all DPS off healing, or not off healing, all DPS like percent based self healing. It's kind of a nerf. It's kind of staying the same, if anything, but other stuff is getting, I don't know. It's not a huge deal, but that's something they've kind of targeted as not something that is getting this 25% buff while everything else is. Marksmanship is getting a nerf here on In the Rhythm and Windrunner's Guidance. I don't know if it was just you guys, but in my raid testing, the Marksmanship Hunter was near the top of the meters pretty much reliably, so not surprised to see a little bit happening to them there. Although the thing about testing is it's always just kind of, you need to make sure you don't read too much into it, but they're getting nerfed, which does line up with what I was expecting to happen based off of that with pretty low confidence. They're also nerfing the Survival 2-set and 4-set from Aberrus. Okay. Brewmaster getting 25% on all of their healing, and actually 92% on Vivify. And Celestial Fortune is also getting a compensation buff here, so that all the Brewmaster effects. All the Brewmaster effects. I'm trying to think if there's anything here that's going to be a winner or a loser for Brew. If anything, it's just like the bigger health bar and bigger incoming damage. That's probably a downside for Brew relative to other tanks, because that was kind of a strength of Brewmaster, was that it had that bigger health bar, but it kind of needed the external healing to help keep it topped up. So if the external healing is getting nerfed and everybody's kind of getting a bigger health bar, maybe that's bad news for Brew, but I'm not sure. I'm not very confident in that. Chikakun, they're also nerfing. It looks like all non-tank percent health based things are getting nerfs here to the percentage to keep the flat amount the same. 2-set's been adjusted to put an ICD on Soulfang Infusion. Windwalker, self-healing buffs, and actually bigger buffs to Expel Harm and Vivify. So just like with Druid, it looks like they're actually buffing the flat healing of some of these off-healing. Well, I guess Expel Harm's not off-healing, but Vivify, these off-healing effects to make them a little bit more impactful. Paladin, bunch of changes. Okay, all right. What do we got here? Is today the day that they say Prot Paladin is not going to be overpowered next year? Let us see. Okay, a couple of bugs fixed. Moment of Glory buffed. Again, this is the 25% buff. Bulwark of Order buffed. Light of the Titans buffed. Word of Glory buffed. And Flash of Light buffed. Okay. So all of these are just kind of to be expected changes. And the hammer has yet to fall on the Prot Paladins. They're still looking really, really good. For some reason, the Flash of Light is getting the extra off-healing buff as well. Although that's not something I really expect you'll ever cast on Prot in most cases. But for the most part, don't look at this as like, oh, they're buffing Prot Pally, they need to not be doing that or whatever. This is just they're kind of blanket doing the same thing to all tanks, right? And yeah, so they have yet to nerf Prot Pally, which I do still expect is coming, but there's only 2 weeks until the patch now, so my Prot Pally's 422 and ready to game if they don't. Ret Pally, we've got also off-healing buffs. Again, bigger here. You see the Word of Glory is a bigger number for Ret than it was for Prot because it's off-healing for Ret more, whereas for Prot, it's more just self-healing. And then they're actually nerfing Light Celerity, but buffing the Flash of Light baseline. Guided Prayer is also getting nerfed. Justgar's Vengeance, again, percent health-based thing, is getting compensated, like nerfed to stay the same flat. Okay. Shadow Priest, just the off-healing stuff, no other changes to the spec. Rogue, Soothing Darkness, that max HP change that we've been seeing a lot of stuff. Earth Grab Totem's getting buffed, cool, a little bit more usable. Cool anti-spiteful tech as well as Earth Grab Totem. I was playing with a Shaman that was using this in some keys last week, and it was pretty nice. Okay, Ellie Shaman, again, the 25% stuff, more on their off-healing. And also, they are nerfing the 2-set and nerfing the 4-set, it looks like. Okay. Enhancement, 5% aura buff on damage and, on damage. Same off-healing changes as well. Improved Maelstrom Weapon is getting nerfed. That's an off-healing proc thing, I think. And Aberrus, the Shadowed Crucible, so the 4-set is being nerfed. Okay. But there's an aura buff in here, so probably still good news for enhancement overall. 5% aura buff. And then I guess this is like a 33% nerf to the 4-set, something like that. Okay, Warlock Demon Skin is getting nerfed by a tiny bit on the 2 ranks of it mode. All right, I suspect that Warlock is one of these things where they could show me 10 changes that nerf its survivability, and I'm still just not going to believe that spec is not giga tanky until I actually see them dying in any content. I got tricked a little bit. They did this change in the beta cycle where they just like nerfed Warlock across the board survivability. It's still just the tankiest class I've ever seen, so I suspect they're going to be totally fine. And again, this is just that same percent HP change. Not even a change if you're only a 1-point gamer on Demon Skin as well. I don't know if anybody does that, but that got better. Warrior Titanic Throw, that's AoE heroic throw, is not going to affect CC'd targets. Nice. Ignore Pain buff. Pain and Gain actually getting the same compensation nerf that we've seen to DPS specs. It's actually going to land on the class side of Warrior here, which is going to hit Prot as well. Pain and Gain is not a huge part of the Prot Warrior HPS package, though, and in fact, sometimes you don't even talent it, so it's not a huge nerf to the spec. Arms, again, and Fury also getting these percent health nerfs. Protection, Fueled by Violence, buffed again. They've buffed this thing like 4 times. It still hasn't been picked yet against the other one that's in the same choice node. And they are also buffing the 2-set by they're doubling the power of the 2-set and also doubling the is this more than doubling the power of the 4-set by quite a bit as well? Okay. Yeah, Prot Warrior actually, I think, putting some power in the set bonus made some sense. I do think the spec, especially in the world of Prot Pally, it was kind of looking like maybe the 4th or 5th best tank for the new raid, so it's nice to see them getting buffed, even though obviously we're kind of used to Prot Warrior being OP for the last patch, but honestly right now I think it is like 4th best or something like that right now. All right, and then finally we have the dungeons and raids changes that have gotten put in here as well. So first off, Brackenhide Hollow. They have made the first boss. Gashtooth is going to sharpen her knife and laugh at her target as they stumble around while blinded by decayed senses. The first boss in Brackenhide does this awful thing where it like blinds one of you and it like blinds your tank and hexes your healer at the same time, something like that. And it looks like what they're going to do now is they're going to make it so that while that blind is up, Gashtooth isn't going to go and auto other people, which that seems good. That seems like a good change to that. Still a nasty, nasty ability. It only happens like once every minute or something, though. So it's not the end of the world, but it is still a tough part of this fight. I don't know. We'll have to test it some with this change. Freehold. Many enemies have had their abilities and visuals updated. This seems really good. This is a dungeon that I love Freehold, but it does show its age a little bit, even though it's only like 4 years old. It does show its age a little bit with how some of the abilities are kind of like Freehold is sort of this dungeon where you kind of just have to know how everything works and know which abilities are like AoEs because they don't give you a great indication. So if they're changing that, I think that is great. I think that's fantastic. Skycap and Crag. Azurite Powder Shot is now a 60-yard cone, and its impact damage is reduced. Visual is updated to support this. The dot can also now be dispelled. Now, the thing about Azurite Powder Shot, people used to outrange this. The way you used to play this was you would either line of sight it or outrange it because it did so much damage that it would just one-shot you on any key level. So you would have your healer playing 40 yards or 45 yards away or whatever. It was a 40-yard cone. And you'd have your DPS play behind a plank so that the boss couldn't see them. And your DPS would need to use like a toy to get a model that was small enough to hide behind the plank as well. It was really annoying. So they're changing this, and hopefully they're going to adjust the line of sight thing as well, so that the line of sighting isn't also not still the right move. But I suspect what you're going to want to do now is spread out such that you've got 5 different. You're spread out in like a 5 players all around the boss in high keys, and that way whichever person he picks is only one debuff is going to go out, and you just dispel them, and hopefully that impact damage is not too bad up front. Great change to this fight. As long as it's enough to make it so that you're not just having like the bad part of this could be if the impact damage isn't reduced enough, and now you have a mechanic that's just the healer now also has to like try and line or like pop defensives or something and try and live it that way. And if the melee DPS are still line of sighting this mechanic, for instance, I think that's a big L. So hopefully that's something that they do not. I mean, if this is low enough damage, then that will fix that, because you do also still need to be baiting the spits during this phase as well. So that makes it hard to just spread it as a 5-person, like to have 5 people not be in the same cone as each other on this fight. Council of Captains. This is one of the nastiest bosses in here, especially depending on which week you get, if Eudora is active as one of the enemies. So confidence boosting Freehold Brew now increases crit chance by 30%. Raoul's barrel targeting has been updated to target damage dealers, then healers, then tanks as last resort. This used to have character ID based. This used to be speculated to have character ID based targeting, where it would like every character has a character ID that is associated with them that only gets updated when they like name change or transfer servers or when their character is created. And there's some mechanics that just use that. We think like N'Zoth tentacle random shots, for instance, and Raoul's blackout barrel was another one of those where there were just some people that just 9 out of 10 times would get targeted by this thing across 20 freehold runs and logs. So going back and updating this targeting seems good. Having it prefer damage dealers, then healers, then tanks also seems good. The way this used to work was that the barrel would be thrown at somebody, and then you had like 2 seconds to have somebody else get closer to it, and it would target them instead when it actually landed on the ground. Hopefully they preserve that functionality, because I think that's cool, and having having somebody choose to soak it, I think was cool. But having it never originally target the tanks and healers and always target one of the DPS seems like a good way to make it work as well. And I would be fine if it just always, locked onto them. They've nerfed the duration of Barrel Smash, but buffed the damage. Barrel Smash was really annoying because you had to like max melee range this to avoid getting hit by it, and it was really nasty. That being said, if the damage has been increased to compensate, I'm a little bit worried that it's going to become another one-shot in this dungeon, or if they're going to have deleted some other one-shots and turned this into a one-shot. So hopefully that's not the case. Eudora's powder shot now avoids shooting the same player twice within 6 seconds. Phenomenal change. Anytime they do changes like this, I think that's really good, because those sorts of deaths can just feel pretty stupid. Making that change to like Tira and Maruk as well, those sorts of things, really good ideas to do. Grape Shot Leap will no longer jump to a location she's already standing at. This is actually huge, because a lot of the deaths you'd have to Eudora, this is when she has like 4 different corners around the room that she'd jump to and then start shooting cones out. But sometimes she would just stay where she was and then start shooting the cones out. But now you're always going to get to see her jumping through the air and be able to hide. So that's good. Also, they've nerfed the impact damage and given it a stacking damage over time effect. I intend to get all 4 stacks of this damage over time effect and tell my healer to heal me, but this is nice as well because, yeah, making it not a one-shot anymore seems very good, and then just something that the healer has to heal through a dot instead. So overall, a bunch of great changes to these 2 bosses. These 2 bosses were, when BFA was live, people loved Freehold, but Freehold was actually the key that became one-shots at the lowest level of key on Tyrannical because of these 2 bosses. So adjusting that is really good because you don't want things to one-shot you in plus 15s, and there was legitimate risk of that happening with these boss mechanics if they went unadjusted. Ring and Booty, Lightning, that's the pig. Now you only have to click 3 times instead of 5. I assume you're still going to want to like bind interact to mass wheel or whatever and spam it that way, but this is a little bit nicer if you're doing it the intended way. They've nerfed the turtle's health by 25%. That's good. That thing had way too much health. And then they've nerfed the duration of Sharknado and updated the visual to be a little bit better as well. Don't see anything in here. So there was a shark bug as well where sharks would like get some weird AI and start moving and jumping. Hopefully that's something that has or will be changed as well. I haven't tested Freehold yet, so not sure. And then Harlan Sweet. So they've got a new ability on him now. A physical damage and 3-second bleed that hits or that ricochets between all players once loaded dice all hands is active. They've also changed the saber. The saber used to choose a player and then shoot 3 sabers, 1 at them and then 1 to their left and 1 to their right. Now it's going to fire a single saber at a random player, and then when all hands is active, it's going to shoot 5 sabers, but not 1 at each player. It's going to shoot 5 in random directions. So that seems pretty cool. This mechanic was probably the most responsible for wipes on this fight, besides like other affix interactions or accidentally pulling trash, was the saber. So that seems good. Seems like a cool way to make it, a fun way to play against it. That, a new take on the mechanic. And then also the Grenadier's Black Powder Bomb visual has been updated. They no longer channel it. It's now an 8-yard AoE. So the way these Grenadiers used to work is they would just like channel Black Powder Bomb, and then when their channel finished, like they would explode and anybody near them would die. I think that's how it used to work, but now it sounds like they're going to just throw grenades, so you're not going to be able to just root them and leave them alone, and you're going to have to actually kill them, which that makes sense, especially given that they're called Grenadiers. Grenadiers are not known for just holding onto the grenade and running into the group. Usually they do know to throw them, so that seems like a good change to this mechanic. Finally, Primal Tsunami is not going to use Rogue Waves anymore. That's really... I already hated that mechanic just in M0s, so that's nice. And stacks of Infuse are now reset between intermissions as well. This is This is the boss getting more powerful based on getting channeled during the intermissions. And basically now you're not going to get in the situation where like, oh, if you have to do a 3-minute Primal Tsunami, it's unhealable by minute 2 of that encounter. And instead it's going to be resetting and staying reasonable. This is the kind of standard anti-tyrannical tech that basically every boss, except for Croth, kind of has gotten over the years, where it's like, hey, we want you to know that, like, it's not going to be like the start of Legion, because at the very start of Legion, there were bosses like Court of Stars, last boss, where it was just the damage just ramped up infinitely over the course of the fight, and it was like, yeah, you're trying to do this key on medium to high tyrannical, it's impossible, good luck. But now it's instead saying, look, you can live this fight. If you can make it to the 3-minute mark, you just have to keep rinsing and repeating until you can kill the boss. And that, I think, is good. Croth was kind of fine the way that it ramped up, because it was always doable up to very high tyrannical. So I think carefully used, they can set up those sorts of like infinitely scaling mechanics. But in general, I think most bosses should behave like this instead. Uldaman, Bromac now always summons 3 ambushers and 1 geomancer. This is really good, because it used to be RNG, so you could just get 4 geomancers, and just that you've got 4 casters that aren't coming in, and it's a nightmare. You got to line of sight them, but the pillars in the room aren't line of sight, so you're trying to line of sight them around like a pebble that's sticking out of the wall, and very, very, very nasty RNG. Good to remove that RNG. Unrelenting damage bonus has been reduced on Sentinel Talandris. I believe this is just like every time that it does the cycle of mechanics, it gets a stack of Unrelenting. So they're nerfing how much it scales over time. It is still gaining damage over time, so it does sort of have that high tyrannical fear, but at 5% per stack, I'm sure that that's going to be manageable. And then they've also nerfed the last boss in Uldaman. this is one of the bosses where you do it on M0 and you're like, whew, that was quite a bit tougher than the other bosses. So it does seem like a good one to hit with that. Underrot, now this is one of the patch notes of all time. Many enemies have had their abilities updated and adjusted. I do not have a take on this. I need to know more before I can have a take on this, but I guess my take is I'm glad they're changing stuff. I hope they're changing stuff to be good, not bad, but there's no way to know. Then we have some changes to professions. Everything is basically giving 25% more stamina. The enchants and stuff as well, all the stamina sources. It makes sense. And then some PvP changes, which you're going to need to find another content creator to talk about those, because I haven't PvP'd this expansion, haven't had to. TY Blizzard. Last time I PvP'd was Shadowlands Season 1, when I had to get 2,400 for 233 weapons, and that was not as fun as it has been to just PvE. So anyways, those are the Dragonflight 10.1 PTR development notes for today. Hope you've enjoyed this video. Remember to hit subscribe. I looked at the YouTube thing and they're like, oh, your channel sucks. Nobody's subscribed to it. Of your viewers, like the average on YouTube, the average YouTuber has like twice as many of their viewers subbed as you. It's because you don't tell them in your videos enough and you suck and you're bad at this. So I'm supposed to remind you, but I'm not going to do that in most of my videos. I hate it. Anyways, hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one. Bye.